on earth would qualify me to come out here and say, everything you think you know about everything is wrong? Well, this wasn't my idea originally. So I have studied several professors in my general workday, but one in particular, Ellen Langer, who was the very first female tenured professor in the psychology department at Harvard. So here's what she has to say.
Tell me, how much is 1 and 1? Now, if I start with this, people usually go, oh no, we're going to have to listen to this for a long time, that it's so ridiculous. But it turns out 1 and 1 is 2 only some of the time. 1 and 1 is 2 if you're using the base 10 number system. If you're using the base 2 number system, 1 and 1 is depicted as 10. Easier to understand. You take 1 watt of chewing gum. You add it to 1 watt of chewing gum. 1 plus 1 is 1. So I want to argue that almost all that we think we know is wrong in at least some context.
So I will give you a little bit of my background. Like all good stories, this one starts with a completely crazy parent, notably my mother, and her massive collection of lifestyle magazines that she somehow ran out of storage in the rest of the house. So a lot of it was just in my armoire. And she used to put Cosmo back there. That's how old I am, Cosmopolitan. Like people who know are shaking their heads. People who don't are like, what is she talking about? It was very racy for someone of my tender age. So I used to love to kind of flip through those. But there was a point at which I noticed there was a distinct trend in the covers of these magazines that was, spanned about 10 years. She was definitely a pack rat when it came to these documents. Was that you would have the same magazine cover with a headline that was like, you should eat carbs all the time. And then 2 years later, you should never eat carbs. And it, all of these kind of refuting ideas, but shouting, right? These really intense statements about what we should do about our health, about our lifestyle, and then 2 years later, completely refuted by the same publication. So this actually colored my perception about education and explains many things about my storied career in school. But it really led me to not only question everything, but the benefit was actually that it fueled this incredible curiosity, because I didn't just take what the teachers were telling me at face value, which also was caused them some great consternation, but that's another story for another time. So then I went to college and decided to get a fine arts degree instead of an MBA. Excellent choice. Why, you ask, would I do that? 1, because it was in London. 2, because it's only a 3-year degree instead of a 4-year degree, and I am fundamentally lazy. And it was far away from the aforementioned crazy mom. So I didn't actually become a painter. I was focused more on writing. So I got out of college and was just waiting for the offers to come pouring in. And it turns out that this is not true. That in boardrooms around the world, no one is saying, please, we need to add more BFAs to our workforce. So I started my career in the music industry, because they don't really care about that kind of stuff, and later in commercial production. And then I made a couple of people, and they are now big hairy man children. One of them is actually at NYU studying law. Super excited about that. So I know, NYU in the house, or lawyers, right? I'm gonna start doing crimes the minute he graduates. I have to get my money's worth. And then I became one of the world's foremost experts on immersive technology. All right, that's like a little bit of a big statement, but I'm up here, I've got the mic. All right, so now back to our regularly scheduled programming. This is the interactive portion. So I expect some feedback when I show you the next image. Are you ready?
Yes.
Ooh, anticlimactic. What is this? If you've already seen this and you know, just give it a second. Just shout it out. Anybody. Any idea? There's nothing wrong. This is like Rorschach. You know, if any of you have been in therapy, don't pretend you don't know. Skull. Anybody else?
Super creepy skull.
Super creepy skull. Anybody else? A fawn? A map. It is a cow. All right, we're going back to Ellen.
All right, what I want you to do is play along with me, because then you'll get a better sense of what I'm going to try to show you. So the first thing is, what is this? Now, those of you who don't see the cow, don't worry. The others only see it because somebody previously told it to them. All right, this is the way the world starts off for us. We have no idea what it is. Then somebody labels it. Now, the problem is that once it's labeled, we're no longer able to see it in any other way. And that's the way we learn about most things, who we are, what we can do, what the world consists of. It's impossible not to see the cow. So, you know, part of this journey that I've been on, and I look at this a lot because I have no life, but we're always searching for truths, right? Things that we want to kind of file away as the truth that we can then rely on later on as we move through life. And then we amass this, you know, these truths, layers and layers of truth in the form of experience, and then we're able to use that experience as we move through life. This is a fantastic theory. However, doesn't work. So our brain is a little bit like a blockchain, right? Blockchain works by consensus, right? So everyone has to agree that this occurred, and then it gets ratified to the blockchain. Well, this is the same thing with your brain. It's a consensus. I'm going to trademark that. Now, our brain is not a particularly reliable blockchain, however. So once we agree that this thing that we believe to be true, we decide we're going to kind of ratify it to our brains. But the moment you ratify it, every second, every year, every decade, after that event, it becomes less and less true in two separate spheres. One is that when you get to be my age, you just forget half of it. The second is that it ceases to be true in the context of life today. And especially with AI, that's becoming more and more true. Back to Ellen. Add these numbers with me. 1,000, 1,040, 2,040, 2,070, 3,070, 3,090, 4,090. Okay, now I want to do this one more time. I want you to add 4,090, and to that add 10. Okay. The argument that I'm going to be making, and have for the last 40 years, is that most of us are mindless virtually all the time. So I don't understand the intern who spoke about soon we may be living with robots. I think that most of us already are.
In her studies, and she studies the science of mindfulness without meditation. And meditation is incredibly valuable, but the way that she is looking at mindfulness, and again, I think this is valuable for all of us, is in trusting in your ability to be present and assess the information that's in front of you and not rely so much on the things that we believe we've learned in the past, and to actually just be conscious of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I dial a lot of this back to the education system, right? Which in my, let's say, statistically insignificant trial set of 2 children through the education system, what I did see is that they are diametrically opposed learners, and that our education system did not serve both of them. Served one of them very well, the other one in the principal's office all the time. And you can guess which that one takes after. So, you know, and the education system hasn't been really transformed in centuries. We're still learning the basic principles, and we're still pushing out factory workers.
Do you know David Copperfield, the famous magician? Okay, what he wants is for you to pick one of these 6 cards. Everybody picked a card? Now, for this to work, you have to look right in his eyes. Okay, and he makes sure he doesn't know you, but he's going to tell you which card you selected. Look, your card is gone. Now, for how many of you is your card gone? Yeah, so you see, I'll have to talk later to the rest of you who wouldn't raise your hands. And the reason for that is every card is different. Okay, so what happens is we don't see what's right in front of us, we don't see what's to the right, to the left, and all the while we're oblivious to the fact that we're basically not there.
In immersive technology, and of course I'm going to talk about technology, I have to weave it into everything that I do, sadly, but this is Second Life. And in virtual environments, ironically, we talk about this sense of presence, right? Meaning that we feel there. And it's interesting that in these immersive environments, we are actually much more present and have presence of mind because it's all new, right? We're not really used to moving through this spectrum of reality that's coming, right? Where there's going to be this digital landscape available in our field of view all of the time, starting with augmented reality all the way into these virtual environments. And I'm not naming names, but I'm just saying that almost all of us are just gorillas with iPhones or Android in some people's cases. But you know, we're kind of just skating through life, and we're not using the creative intelligence that is going to propel us forward, especially in, I mean, this is so topical that this is happening now with AI on everybody's minds, and the negative concerns, but also the positive concerns, and where do we as humans fit? And we have to make a decision. We don't get to leave it up to regulators. We don't get to say, oh, sorry, next 4 generations, we kind of screwed everything up. We let the genie out of the bottle. Let us know how it goes. We'll be over here at the club sipping martinis. That's not going to work. We all need to engage in a whole new mechanic. So what is the answer? Well, education, as I mentioned. Not only education of the next generations, which I think is critical. I don't just think it's STEM education. I think it's STEAM. We have got to over-index on the arts in all of its forms. Now, we're going to have these little AI creatures buzzing around our heads, giving us all the answers to the things we need to know in the moment. The kind of facts and figures that will be as accurate as they can be given the moment. So that's going to release a lot of cognitive load for us as humans. What are we going to replace that with? Well, this idea of mindfulness. And mindfulness extends into creativity, which is why I think this talk is relevant for today. And the answer also lies somehow, like, how do we really want technology and humanity to evolve? How many of you believe in the singularity, where we are just going to merge with machines? All right, who believes we already have? You got to put your phone down to answer, just kidding. So the thing that makes us human that we're not going to be able to replicate, with AI, at least in the near term, is our ability to create something from nothing. We can create something just out of pure thought. And I wrote a story back in 2014, or an article about volumetric storytelling. And then from there, as I started to study mindfulness and neuroscience and kind of the practice of mindset change, I came up with sort of an evolution of that idea, which is volumetric thinking. And I see this in young kids, like this idea that whoa, I just got much God voice. It's got much louder. I really like that. I'm going to do that all the time. This idea that we can pull down completely disparate ideas into something new that is completely unique. And I think we have to be connected to that 5-year-old in all of us. Right? If you go to a 5-year-old and say, what are you going to do this afternoon? They're like, well, obviously I'm going to ride my, purple giraffe Fred, and we're going to go to the moon. We're going to pick some money off the money tree, and then we're going to go to the Costco of candy. And then we're going to eat some candy, but then I'm going to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich as long as I'm home by 6. Mom doesn't care. And not only do they just rattle that off, they've done it. Like, it's in their belief system. And yet we as adults think that's absurd. But it's that kind of thinking, that elevated, expansive thinking. It doesn't have to be real, right? Give yourself permission to fantasize. Project yourself 25 years in the future. This is the work that I do with corporates, believe it or not, that come in all pouty face. But this is an exercise for all of us. Give yourself the ability to fantasize and just try every day. And there's a reason for this, and part of the science of mindfulness is that just the act of doing it one time can open up new neural pathways in your brain. And that helps you in your day-to-day. So we live in this construct now, right? And you have work to do, you've got things to do. So this exercise is beneficial to the things you have to do day-to-day. It helps you connect ideas that you wouldn't necessarily see. So it is a benefit. And creativity, really, I think everything starts with a blank canvas, right? But project yourself 25 years in the future, start with a blank canvas, and fill it in. And guess what? You can be any age. You can be any species. You can be doing whatever you want. And out of every 1,000 things you put down, get a little journal. There might be a kernel of something in there that actually you can put into your future path. And if we do that collectively, then we have agency over the future. Then we're going to be able to galvanize humanity as a collective and build a positive path forward, not be fearful of all of this technology. So my question to all of you is, what haven't we imagined? Right? Just think about that. Steve Jobs was not a genius in any other way than anyone else in this room is. Right? He just lived in the future and wanted to build things that people would love. So, in addition to everything we think we know being wrong, it's also all a construct. Time, color, language, it's all a construct. Right? We can invent an entirely new system for everything if we want to. What would that look like for you? I think the possibilities are endless. So if I can ask all of you a favor, do it just one time. You don't have to get the journal if you don't want to, but it'd be really awesome. And we'll talk about it next year. And just try it once. Because I think you'll find that it's fun. And maybe it will just elevate your life and those around you. So I'll leave you with my favorite quote. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So let's create something brilliant. Thanks so much.
Hey, Amy, before you go, would you take a few questions?
Sure.
Okay, great.
You mentioned building new neural pathways, and how do you think that mindfulness plays into that? I know a little bit about neuroplasticity, but how do you think that building new neural pathways and creating neuroplasticity in our brains factors into how creative we are and how we're able to hone that creativity?
Well, I think it's depending on what your goal is, right? I think all of us are much more creative than we give ourselves credit for. I mean, kids aren't embarrassed by their drawings when they're little, right? It's only then when somebody says, "Oh, like this is how you do it," that dreaded, just negativity that we kind of foist on kids. And I am a big believer in. I mean, look, I studied art. I care about business. And it was funny when I first got into the workforce, I was like, oh my God, why did I get a BFA? That's so useless. But I am so grateful now because I think that is why I kind of have the decoder ring. I can live in a really, really high-tech world and understand how technology can solve business problems. but I'm also able to kind of creatively challenge people to think more broadly about how to change their businesses. And so that in and of itself, I think, is creative. It just depends on your definition. If, one exercise of being, the 25-year thing, and then suddenly, are you going to be Picasso? I don't know what the answer to that is, but if you care about that, this is one pathway to changing the way you think, and hopefully changing your perspectives about yourself. Because the biggest challenges for us also is our belief systems, and things that we have been told that are actually negative about us, from a personal standpoint, that starts when we're this big, right? With the not best teachers, and then other kids being really nasty. Helping to kind of flush that out and give us a sense of purpose and really be mindful and be present.
Amy?
Who's next? Oh, yeah.
So I actually work in the art world and with nonprofits, and I've taught at universities. One of the concepts that I'm struggling to reconcile with AI is connoisseurship, and that takes years and years of observing types of artists and individuals and types of materials. Do you think AI can or is at that point where it could recognize the fake, Leonardo just instantaneously? Because there are famous connoisseurs from history who just knew when something was fake, and I know you know about that since you were in London. Yeah. I think this is a really interesting question. I think the whole question of generative AI and art and IP and what is real and what is authentic. Also, a lot of the to answer your question, I think we can train AI to recognize the nuances and the brushstrokes. I think where it gets interesting relative to other artists, and maybe because I have this this education in art background, even though I'm not a fine artist by any stretch, but I'm a photographer. And other photographers influence me. And we are just feeding basically all of that information to AI. And someone asked me a really interesting question saying, well, to be able to be a painter, you have to have skills. And now we're giving tools to people who don't have those fine art skills. And is that diminishing the skills of those who can do it? And I don't think it is. Actually, I think it's making people have access to art in ways that they never could. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I do think that AI is going to be an incredible tool for verifying, also with blockchain, to be able to track the provenance of a particular artwork, so we don't ever even have to question whether it's an authentic piece or not. Anybody else?
Oh, sorry, I had the microphone.
Yeah, let's do the rule that it's whoever has the microphone.
Well, I don't know if they can go.
No, go ahead.
No, you have the microphone.
I just was curious. I'm in education and a researcher in education in the STEM fields. And you mentioned education and STEM and moving forward, it should be STEAM. And I wanted to know how you think that can happen, because for the United States, it's all STEM. And it's not really shifting towards STEAM in schools or in universities, so I'm just curious to hear about that.
Well, there's the pragmatic path, changing the system is an enormous, seemingly impossible lift. But we have to start somewhere. We have to say, as a society, we want to change the education system and start making schools available. And not just private schools, because then that becomes exclusionary. It's going to be very challenging in the public school system, right? Because our whole system is predicated on teaching to the test effectively. That, if you look at, Howard Gardner's, whether it's 7 intelligences, there's 13, there's 2,000, who knows? But we're teaching to a very specific type of intelligence right now, and we're not serving kids who knows what the opportunities would be for them. So, the fact that you're asking the question means that you're able to enact a little bit of change in your sphere, and then influence the teachers around you. And eventually, I hope all of you stand up with parents and say, all right, we're done with this testing. We want something better. And again, talk to these two because they're working on that as well.
Great, and we have time for one more question, and then Amy will be here this afternoon, and you can ask additional questions for $100 per question.
Payable to Microsoft.
Hi, Amy. Very interesting belief system myself. I've read that by 7 years old, the kid's belief system is set up by 7.
If someone is traumatized, whatever age they are traumatized, when they have those types of triggers in the future, their coping system is also stuck at that age. Now, this is why this sort of science of mindfulness, neuroplasticity, which you mentioned, I believe, and there is evidence, there's research happening, but there's no kind of black and white answer to this. But I do believe that people can change their mindset and the way they think. And I do think that neural pathways is the way to do that, and sort of opening up the way you think about things. And that's by exercising the muscles that art and creativity require.
Are you getting a lot of calls from school districts?
I don't work with school districts.
Smart.
Well, actually, that's not entirely true. I work with Marin County School System. We have a group called XR Marin, and we're using immersive technology to teach kids because it's too expensive for schools. So we have to do it outside.
All right. Thank you very much, Amy Peck.